Morning, everyone. My name is Debbie Mann. I'm with Festivals and Events Ontario, and thank you for joining us for our second to last Tuesday talks for this year for 2020. And I'd like to welcome Darrell Schuurman from the LGBTQ Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Yay, Darrell! Thank you. It's been a long time.
It has, Debbie. Thank you. So I was thrilled when you reached out a couple of weeks ago because we've known each other for a very long time. So it's great to reconnect and a privilege to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for doing this with us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then the Canadian Chamber of Commerce as well, and so to give everybody a scope of who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So as Debbie mentioned, I'm with CGLCC, so we're Canada's LGBT plus Chamber of Commerce. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO. So the Chamber has been around for a few years. We've been around actually for 17 years. Our mandate really is to support LGBT entrepreneurs and businesses, helping them ultimately to grow and succeed, and to really try to create an inclusive economy. So it's very much around how are we supporting our businesses, helping them to be the best that they can be.
Thank you. And just when I was asked to do something, so now I have to figure this out. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Just remind everybody to mute themselves, that's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, everybody, can you mute yourselves? Thanks, Jay. Can you mute yourselves so that we won't hear any background noise? And that's it. So thanks. Darrell, so the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
What's your mandate in the tourism world? Because festivals and events, we talked a little earlier, festivals and events are in the tourism umbrella. So
yeah, it's interesting. So as you know, we operate as a Chamber of Commerce, so we represent all industries, all sectors. And the tourism initiative that we've been working on is really the only program that we have at the Chamber that focuses specifically on one industry, and that is the tourism industry. And you know, where we've been trying to build this out is how can we support Canada's tourism industry at the end of the day, increase our tourism receipts and really start to look at the LGBT travel market. You know, we've done a lot of research over the past and the past year here, and really being able to showcase that the LGBT travel market is a really lucrative market for Canada's and Ontario's tourism industry to be looking at. And especially I think when, you know, in the current economic climate, you know, it's one that we should be looking at towards recovery. We know from past, past trends that the LGBT travel market is one that rebounds the quickest. They start traveling after major instances like 9/11, like after SARS. We saw that the LGBT traveler really start traveling again sooner. And so so that's one aspect. And then they also have, in terms of from a discretionary income, they tend to have significantly higher discretionary income and spend more on travel. So, you know, it's a lucrative market for the tourism industry. So for those operators or events and festivals to really look at engaging the LGBT travelers. So that's a lot of what, you know, at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve here. And you know, in order to be able for our events and for our businesses here to really be able to deliver kind of what they're looking for, we need to make sure that the industry is market ready. And so what we've been working on over the last year is a lot of development tools, support mechanisms to be able to allow the businesses and allow events to make sure that they are ready to welcome LGBT travelers.
And you've been working with a couple of, you've been working with TAIO as well, haven't you?
Yeah. We actually just signed an MOU with TAIO at their conference earlier this year. So really, again, it's very much focused on, you know, how can we support Ontario's industry, and make sure that they have the resources and the tools to best deliver and serve this market. So really excited about the partnership with TIO here in the province, and then kind of at the national level, we've a lot of the work, I should mention, a lot of the work that we've been doing is in partnership with the tourism industry, or sorry, the Canadian Tourism Human Resource Council and the federal government. So through ISAD, a lot of the funding that's been provided to deliver and to develop a lot of this stuff has been all funded through the federal government. So really doing a lot of this in partnership with some national organizations in government.
That's pretty exciting. That's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, and I think that it just shows our government's commitment to making sure that that we are an inclusive industry, and that LGBT is one aspect of their focus this year, as has been Indigenous tourism, culinary, but to me, it speaks to their commitment around making sure that the industry is well poised to grow, and I think again after this current climate, really poised to be able to recover in the near future.
Great. What about, so we have a lot of festival and event people on board here, and so what are some of the key things that the leadership in this industry need to know about including the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that we can probably delve into here. I think maybe just starting with the fact that as a festival or event, are you is your event inclusive? And I'm going to really focus here, and I know that the topic here is around LGBT, but I think it can go beyond that and extend beyond just LGBT inclusivity, and it's really kind of our festivals and events inclusive broadly in terms of from all visitors or from all attendees. And so I think that's a key piece, and there's lots of ways that we can start to look at in terms of how do we make sure that we're building out an LGBT inclusive festival and event. And I think a key piece, I think that we've seen a lot of conversation, heard a lot of conversation over the last, around trans issues and trans inclusion. And I think that that's probably one of the areas that has gotten the most attention. So when we're looking at that, are we being inclusive of the entire LGBT community, specifically, and speaking to the trans members of the community, and there's a lot of things that we can start to look at there in terms of language that we're using, which is a really key thing, making sure that we're using the appropriate language, and we can chat about that in a second, Debbie. But and then even just the facilities that we're offering and providing to our guests, making sure that those are inclusive and welcoming of trans and broader LGBT and non-binary guests.
So languaging. So I've noticed even some of the guests here today, the participants here today have put she, her in their name. And so I'm kind of at the age, we were talking about this yesterday, I'm of the age bracket that it's like, why are you doing that? It makes you look like a woman to me. And really, we had a great conversation. So can we go there?
Yeah, I think that this goes back to, I think, our understanding of perhaps gender identity. And, I think that we kind of the traditional world we live in, kind of this very binary type of world. And we're very kind of focused on, if you will, a kind of assigned sex at birth. And it's, it's either male or female, and it's like kind of that binary world. But, we're today, we've much further beyond that. And I think that gender identity, which is really how one chooses to kind of their own kind of internal sense of being. So, you know, they may identify as male or female or both or neither. And so when we start to assume that, like if I was to assume that you are she, you may not actually personally, your gender identity may be something else. So that's me assuming something. And then if I start to refer to you in pronouns that are not how you personally identify, that's creating a negative experience. And so you're not feeling included, you're not feeling welcome, and to some may not feel safe. So it's really about making sure that we're really kind of letting the guests or attendees tell us how they want to be addressed and how they want to be included. And so as you can see in my name, I use he, him. And so that's how, if somebody was to address me, you know, I would prefer for them to use he, him. If you're perhaps non-binary, you may choose to be referred to as they or them. And that's how then, if we're interacting with our attendees or our guests, that's how we should be referring to them, is not by he, but by they or them.
Okay, now that makes sense, because you said to me yesterday when we were chatting earlier that, you know, if somebody kept approaching me and calling me sir, you know, the first time it would be a pass, but if it was a consistent thing, I'd start to, I guess I'd get annoyed. So.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it leaves you with perhaps a negative experience, right?
Yeah.
And for, you know, some people like you may just be able to, you may roll with it. But there's some people, you know, who may take, it may be a very derogatory or hurtful remark. And that is not who they identify with. And so it goes back to, you know, our goal here in the tourism industry and events and festivals is to try to create the best experience for all of our guests, right? So that means making sure that they feel welcome, that they have, you know, your attention, and that you're paying attention to their specific needs, and the choice of the language that you're using to speak to them speaks volumes.
So what about if there's guests who negate that and it can cause some conflict? How does our industry address that? Like in the festival world, I guess, should we have some sort of plan in place to be able to, if there's some sort of fight that breaks out or disagreement?
Yeah, I think that there's a few ways, you know, and I think I'll start with the fact that a lot of it is, it boils down to training and education, you know. So, you know, we look at internally our own internal staff or our volunteers that you'll be engaging with. Are you providing them the training that they need to be able to deliver the type of service that you're looking for? And I mean, you're doing that already in terms of the general service and their ability to welcome guests, but you know, going beyond that, making sure that they know the proper language. So looking at the training that they're being provided, and then how to deal with situations where you may get, to your point, Debbie, is where you may get, there may be moments of conflict. And I think through that training, they'll be able to better understand and identify how to handle those particular discussions and conversations. And I think, you know, as an extension to that, I think it also boils down to your own internal policies and practices. You know, things like, depending on your type of event and festival, you know, showing that you're inclusive. So things like, if you have name tags, you know, do you ask for pronouns on their name tags? And do you put them on their name tags? So that way you're helping to create an environment that is fostering that kind of, those kind of actions. You know, the kind of language that you're asking, or that you have on perhaps registration forms. Do you ask for gender? And are you only providing male and female? And if you are, then you're being exclusionary for some individuals. And so, I think you need to ask yourself, first of all, is that information even important? Do you need to track gender? I think it's something that we just kind of quite often just automatically put onto forms. So do we need that? And if you do need that, then can you make sure that the language or the options that you're providing are inclusive for everybody? So I think it's about creating that environment that is really helping to create that inclusivity. So again, through training, through policies and procedures, that will help, I think, to alleviate some of those potential conflicts that you might get down the road.
That would extend beyond just being LGBT, right? It could extend just beyond that, like color of your skin, your size, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's why at the start, I think although we're talking LGBT here, I think that, inclusion really goes so much further. And I think that we need to be looking at all of those. I'll speak to the fact that, when we're looking at even planning events, right? Are you conscious of dates that you're picking that might not necessarily, or that might not conflict with certain religious holidays, being conscious of those things to make sure that you are inclusive of everybody, and bringing that to the LGBT side, are you conscious of what perhaps events might be going on in the LGBT community that might interact or interfere or perhaps align with your event? And can you work with LGBT other events to help support your own event, to create cross promotion? So I think being conscious of the impact of diversity and how it could not only hinder but actually support your own event is a really important consideration.
So you mentioned you had some training.
Am I
getting too ahead? I mean, is there anything else? I'm just kind of jumping all over the place here, but.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, we do. So part of the work that I mentioned earlier that we're doing with the federal government and THRC, we built out a whole wealth of resources and tools that are made accessible to the industry and all industry members. And so a big piece of that is training. So we have diversity training that we've been doing throughout Ontario, and we have more still coming out. And and that is those training are 4.5 hour. They used to be in person. Clearly, they're not in person anymore. They're virtual now, but they're done with a trained facilitator that really kind of walks you through, creating a safe environment, creating a safe space, not only kind of on an external and kind of from a customer perspective, but on an internal as well. How are you creating a safe and inclusive environment for your own employees and for your own staff? So those trainings are again made available, and we'll be delivering those for free through till March. But we also have a series of workshops that we're also delivering, so information that can better kind of educate industry around, what is the LGBT market? Why would I be concerned about this? Why should I be looking at this as a potential market for my business or for my event? And then we've also been doing what we're calling destination audits. So working with different regions across the province, different destinations, and helping them to become really LGBT market ready. So, really working with the community, doing consultation with the community to help to identify where there's some great opportunities to strengthen them. And, I think that working with your local DMO or your tourism body there in your own community and getting them to really think about this market, I think is a really important move for all industry and for us to grow the Ontario tourism industry.
So I just, a couple of questions have come through, so I thought I'd ask them. Sure. Are you okay with that? Yeah. And we can, yeah, okay. So Maria says, I own a resort in South Frontenac and would like to know how to advertise that we are LGBT friendly. We've already hosted one LGBT wedding. There, so that's your question for her, from her.
Great. Sorry, who is that from?
Marla?
From Marla, okay. Thanks, Marla. I appreciate the question. I think that that's great. You know, I think one of the things that we kind of try to really advocate and promote is making sure, again, as I kind of talked about, is that that you have done kind of that market readiness, so that, you know, that your staff, all of your staff knows that, you know, the best way to welcome and make LGBT customers feel safe and invited, and that they know what if you're looking to go after this market, that your staff are kind of part of this conversation, and are ready to welcome them. I think once you've gotten to that point where you've created that environment, or that service level for LGBT customers, I think getting the message out there is the big challenge. And one of the things that, you know, you can look at doing, and we're working on this right now, again, as part of the federal program, but there are other opportunities, but kind of looking at organizations that you can affiliate with. So there's different tourism organizations, LGBT tourism organizations, that you can become members of, and that you can affiliate with. So there's the kind of internationally, the most internationally known is IGLTA, and they provide a wealth of information and support to you to help you kind of reach the LGBT traveler. But even domestically here, you know, I would encourage you to, I'm not sure kind of where, sorry, I missed where you're based, but working with your local tourism body, to see what they're doing to actively promote themselves to the market. And then also the provincial tourism bodies. So Destination Ontario is doing some great stuff, specifically around the LGBT travel market. So, you know, align with them as well to see how you can kind of, you know, get involved in some of their activities that they're doing. But I think the key thing is really to be able to educate, or to be able to demonstrate your commitment. And I think through affiliation or accreditation, you know, we will be rolling out an accreditation program that will be able to support these businesses in promoting and showcasing your inclusivity. Those are some of some good first steps, I think. Hopefully. Thanks. Or you're on mute, Marla.
Is she asking a question? I can't see her.
I think so.
Marla, you're on mute.
Okay,
there you go.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Two things. One, my resort is run by two women who are a couple. So that would particularly, I think, make for comfort. And as I said in the chat, we've already hosted a wedding, an LGBT wedding. So I just wanted to mention that. And I was wondering if one of you could put in the chat the things that you mentioned that, you know, we should contact.
Yeah, and my colleague Leah is I think on the line, and so maybe Leah, if you can put some of those resources in the chat, that would be great. If you don't mind, thank you. She's the keeper of all of this. She's the one that's been leading this this initiative, and it's doing a great job. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, Leah, that'd be great.
And Marla, we're also recording this, so I'll be sending this out to everybody as well with the link for the recording if you wanted to re-listen to this.
Okay, great.
Amanda had a question as well. You mentioned market readiness. Is there a toolkit or similar type resource available? Are there any costs?
There is a toolkit. So we have, again, as part of this federal initiative, we've been developing a whole series of resources and resource guides. And they are all free for the industry. And so they are made accessible through our website. And again, maybe Leah, if you can just highlight in the chat there, how people can take advantage of that. I think that, we encourage you to kind of sign up and take part in one of the different workshops that we have, and then you'll have access to all of those tools. So I think, so yes, we do. I don't know, Leah, if you were going to add something else to that.
I just have a quick question. Would it be possible to send everybody, like all of today's participants, a follow-up with,
Yes.
links to our toolkits and some of the affiliates that Darrell was talking about? I can put a whole follow-up together for everyone.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I do a follow-up the next day and just thank everybody and send any links, any information that you provide. So feel free to do that to me.
Okay, I will do that, and then all of the affiliates and the programs and everything that Darrell was talking about, there'll be links to that.
Okay.
And I just a few minutes ago signed off on the new toolkit being live.
Oh, great.
I have your link to get into that as well. So I'll send all that to you, Debbie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Dave has a question, and then Kyle.
Hey, Darrell. And I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did, but your organization, is it, it's a federal, provincial, and I guess my question more importantly is, how do you tie in with the local chambers of commerce in the different areas across the province?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are a national organization. And so we work with a series of regional LGBT chambers of commerce and business associations across the country. But then we also do work closely with other mainstream business organizations. So we work closely with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And then we have we work in different capacity with different or local or regional chambers of commerce. A lot of that is done mostly through our LGBT affiliates at the local level, and we kind of work more with the larger Canadian Chamber of Commerce in general. But certainly, where need be, we have worked with local chambers as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Okay, guess it does. Kyle.
Yeah, so if somebody we're in Kitchener, so I'm just going to use Kitchener as an example, and there is a business that wanted to find out more information, they could access it through the Waterloo Region Chamber of Commerce, or would they go directly to you guys, and then you would affiliate with them?
Yeah, the easiest would be for them just to connect directly with us then. Yeah, because we don't have necessarily affiliations or kind of work closely with each regional or local chamber. So I think then the best would be just to reach out directly to us.
Thanks, Dave. Kyle.
Yeah, I was wondering, I think Marla had a wonderful point talking about her resort, how it's actually run by an LGBT couple. So I'm curious if you know of any examples in the festivals and events industry of inclusion from an internal perspective, that the best way to show inclusion is to highlight how being LGBT is actually part of the organization, that it's LGBT owned and operated, that it's maybe a festival has partnered with a local GSA or Pride organization, that they, share resources or help to support one another, include visibility for each other, share learnings and best practices. So one shares how to be inclusive, one shares how to festival management practices. I wonder if you have or are aware of any examples of those.
No, and I think that's actually a really great question. And I think that's where there's huge opportunities. I think that probably, and I won't speak to, and probably can't speak to specifics, I guess, but, I think that, Prides and your Pride events probably provide the biggest opportunity to kind of align with an LGBT organization. I think that I'll use Inside Out Film Festival, which is an LGBT film festival. I think that they've in the past have done some stuff in cross promotions with TIFF, for instance, and so I think that that's an example. But I can't, you know, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I know where destinations and tourism operators have worked with events. So various hotels and like tourism bodies have worked with the events or with LGBT events. But in terms of like other event to event, I'm not sure, but I think that that's a great suggestion. And I don't know, Leah, if we have examples of some of that. Again, I'm turning to Leah now, but.
I'm just trying to think, I'm just thinking of some of the best practice research that we just did, and the best way to share some of that, because I think there are some case studies. But you have also referred to one of the guides that's about to be released, which I think this group would find really helpful, is we actually had some subject matter experts produce guides for us for a toolbox of resources. And we're just finishing up hosting inclusive events. They have some great checklists, you know, and they talk to the dates and different, you know, timings and languages and things for setting up your event. And there may be a business case reference in there. I'd have to double check, but that will be launched in the next couple of weeks on the website as well.
Oh, that's
It'll
great.
be important for people to, it'll be important for people to just check back to your website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we launched the toolkit with 3 guides, and by the end of January, there'll be 11.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
What are the guides going to comprise of?
sorry?
The guides, what will the guides be? What topic? Are they subject matter specific or?
Yeah, so there's a whole host, and so the one that Leah was just talking about was specifically around creating inclusive, LGBT inclusive event. We have one that's focused around trans and non-binary issues and creating an inclusive workplace and workspace. We also have topics that look at LGBT diversity inclusion strategies and best practices. So a variety of different elements. Yeah, I think to go back to your other part of your question, Kyle, I think that, you know, and to what Marla brought up, I think having and being able to kind of showcase your inclusivity through your employees and your management, you know, so if you do have LGBT employees, you know, getting them involved and getting them engaged, not only within the community, but kind of really strengthening what your organization, what your business is doing is really critical. And I think that what that helps to do is really show that I guess commitment in one way, but I think just also that, you know, that you're dedicated and making sure that you're providing the best service, or you're able to provide kind of that welcoming experience that the guests are looking for. So I think being able to work with your employees and coming up with activities that they think might be really good at kind of spreading the news would be valuable as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. A thing, like I know for myself, being a gay man myself, is seeing my community as part of an event, whether or not it is an LGBT focused festival, showing that the community is present, showing that people are part of the organization, part of the planning, that there is maybe LGBT programming or performers showcase. Because I think, Debbie, one of your earlier questions of like, what can you do if there's conflict present? Something as simple as having LGBT volunteers or performers around. We carry a skill set of conflict resolution and awareness to basically intervene and possibly provide resolution right there in the moment without there needing to be a best practice in place. It's as simple as we see something, we recognize it, and we intervene. Like I know that's something that I do on the stilts all the time is as a character just roaming around. If I see something happening, it's like, no, I know what this is. I'm going to change this situation. I'm going to make sure that this person feels supported and that they are not alone, because it's a very isolating thing to be in one of those conflicting situations.
Yeah, and I fully agree, and thank you for that, because I think that that is an important piece is, you know, when you start to look at the programming, you know, when you're planning out your events and your festivals, you know, are you engaging with diverse entertainers or performers, you know, and making sure that there is an LGBT component. I think that, you know, it speaks to what Kyle just talked about. It really helps to build that kind of that safe and welcoming space that you have those people there that can really kind of support on a broader scale. So I think that's a great point, Kyle.
Thank you.
I was just going to also mention one of the other elements that I haven't talked about, but you know, since we just talked about kind of the programming, the other important thing that I think is important to keep in mind is even looking at your suppliers and who you're using for your different products or services to put on your event. And are you engaging with diverse-owned businesses, and you know, in this case, LGBT businesses? But because what that does is it reinforces your commitment to showcasing that diversity is important, that LGBT inclusion is important to you. At the same time, it's helping to strengthen and support that community or the LGBT community in your region. So, you know, little things like if you're you know, buying flags, or if you're buying whatever, if you're, you know, catering or flowers, you know, can you look at engaging a diverse-owned business or an LGBT-owned business for some of those goods and services? I think that's another important element that you should be, or you could be looking at.
How would you find that? How would you know?
That's a good question, yeah.
Yeah, so no, that is a good question. So I think that so through the chamber, one of the things that we do is we act as a certifying body for LGBT-owned businesses. So we have a list of LGBT-owned and run businesses. I think also through our affiliate chambers, our LGBT regional chambers, they also have lists of members that, you know, you can look at. And I think just finding through maybe your local LGBT organization. So if you have a pride group in your city or your community, you know, talk to them to see, you know, are there businesses that they would recommend you using? So I think that there's a few different ways that you could approach that.
How do we get on the lists that you just mentioned?
So Leah can't see this, but I'm looking at her now. But I think that I think if we'll send out more information in terms of how you can register and get on our list there.
Okay.
We'll do that as a follow-up in what Debbie sends out then.
So next steps, Darrell. Are there any, just a minute, many festivals ask, Kyle's saying many festivals ask on their applications for performers and suppliers if they're part of a marginalized community, including if members identify as LGBTQ, is also a great way. Okay.
Yeah.
Great, Kyle, thanks.
That's great.
So what do you think the next steps are? Is there anything else that you wanted to mention, Kyle, and perhaps next steps to be inclusive? Kyle, Darrell, sorry.
Kyle's got lots of great.
That's next week.
That's next week, that's right, yeah.
And no, Kyle, if you do have anything, feel free to jump in. But I think the one thing that I maybe kind of alluded to at the start, and you know, I think it's worth bringing up again, is specifically around our trans community, and I know that washrooms have been a big issue, especially you know, we heard a lot about it in the US, and I don't know for your events or your festivals, you know, if that's kind of been a consideration or a topic. But I think, again, if we're really looking to make sure that we're creating an inclusive and welcoming space, we need to make sure that it's welcoming for everybody. And so whether for our trans or non-binary individuals who may not necessarily either feel welcome or feel comfortable choosing kind of the traditional male or female washroom, you know, what are you doing to address that? You know, are you creating options for gender neutral, or are you creating, you know, a mix of single stall with multi-stall options? You know, so considerations like that, again, just reinforces the fact that you're making those, you're being very considerate and conscious about making sure that everybody is feeling included. So I don't know, maybe that's a question that if, you know, we can open up, is if people have done something within their own event or festival to really be inclusive around as it relates to washrooms. Does anybody have an example?
Hey, Gilbert.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm been listening in here on from the background, but great to see you, Darrell, again. I know you we've met before from your time at Via Rail back in the day. So congratulations for leading up the charge on the chamber. I produce the Fan Expo Pop Culture Comic Cons in Toronto across Canada. And we have indeed have a large, obviously a very inclusive following of fans that come to our events. And we are very active in the LGBT community and have in fact introduced gender neutral bathrooms, washrooms. Our event takes place at the MTCs at the Metro Toronto Convention Center and across sort of Canada, Calgary and Vancouver. But we have introduced gender neutral bathrooms in a very cool, fun way to sort of highlight our, you know, our fan base. And we've received such great sort of feedback, not only because of that, but our investment in the community. We work closely with Glad Day Bookshop, and we had a superhero drag performance at our events. We did superhero drag brunch. We do a lot of LGBT mixers. We worked closely as well with the Church Wellesley BIA to help support. And I think there was a question about supplier diversity. Another great way to sort of sort of seek LGBT plus suppliers is to work with your BIAs. The BIAs are fantastic that way. They lend their support nicely, and they can identify, obviously anyone who's identified, yeah, I mean, I identify as within the LGBT community, so I am very much a big proponent of ensuring that inclusivity is part of what we do at our events. So, but gender neutral bathrooms, it's a no-brainer. I mean, every facility wants to support it, and I think that you know, it goes a long way. And if you are able to work with your suppliers and partners, they'll be able to sort of help sort of facilitate it.
And that's great. And so I'm so glad to hear that you've been doing some amazing things. So thank you for all of that. And I think the fact that, you know, you make a great point, the fact that you're working with, you know, the convention center, MTCC, that, you know, does not have, to my knowledge, they don't have those, but you've been able to work with them to find a solution. And I think that that's key, is that, you know, there might just not be physically possible to, you know, create, we're not building new infrastructure here, but so take the existing infrastructure that you're given and find a solution to do that. And so work with the venue to come up with a solution. I think that it's a great example, and I think it's so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Gilbert. Amanda asks, speaking as a board member for a local DMO, is it better to incorporate LGBT into a travel guide or to create a separate section within the guide? I can explain this question. Okay, Amanda, why don't you just get on and ask?
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks, Darrell. So our DMO is South Georgian Bay Tourism. We're Ontario's Four Seasons playground. Shout out to the north. And we actually are just in the process of creating a digital tourism travel guide. And this actually just came up at our board meeting not that long ago about whether we should be incorporating this specific demographic just included in our list of accommodations and list of events and activities to do and list of experiences, or does the LGBTQ plus community, would they much rather see it as a separate heading or a separate section within our travel and tourism guide? So sorry, Debbie, not necessarily a festivals question, but figured I'd take the opportunity since I have a chance to ask a question. Thanks, Darrell.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Amanda. That's the $1 million question. And I think that where we've seen it kind of progress is now very much kind of inclusion kind of throughout the materials. I think that if we look back over the years, it was very much kind of dedicated sections or microsites. But what we've started to really see is that integration within our general materials, whether it's the website or print collateral or communication. And so I think that there's still certainly room for kind of dedicated targeted materials, but I think it's also important to really show that, as a destination, you are inclusive, and, and that means like making sure that they're included throughout everything that you're doing. I think that if you look at, not to use, Toronto as an example, but I think that they've done a great job in kind of moving from those standalone pieces to kind of that integrated approach. And they still do dedicated, targeted activities. But very much so in everything that they do now, LGBT is part of that, because that's true inclusion, right? Is making sure that, because I'm not only looking at LGBT specific materials, I will pick up, a general vacation guide, for instance. And, if I see that, Georgian Bay has, a same-sex couple in there, that speaks to me, like the fact that, this is a mainstream publication, but I'm represented here. So I think that resonates well with the community, and that's reinforced by the research that has come out, not only by ourselves but our counterparts in the U.S. is kind of that shift to more inclusive advertising and marketing.
Okay, thanks so much. And just a follow-up question, because I did a lot of work in my previous capacity on accessible tourism and having opportunities for persons with disabilities. And, the universal symbol for being accessible is the white wheelchair on a blue background. I think actually they're changing that anyways. Is it safe to say by having, a business listing that if there was, the rainbow flag, or is there a universally accepted symbol that could support those business listings on a directory? Yeah.
So it tends to be the rainbow flag tends to be kind of the generally accepted indication. I think the important thing to keep in mind is making sure that that the businesses truly are ready, and that they're not just kind of slapping on a rainbow flag to try to get a piece of this market, because I think that's one of the other things that research has shown is that, our businesses, our travelers in our community really support those businesses that are supporting them. So it's more that sustained engagement, sustained participation, and demonstrated. And so they will, quickly know if a business has just slapped up a rainbow flag, but haven't done kind of that internal or that market readiness piece that we've talked about. So it's making sure that they have got, everything, have gone through the process to make sure that they feel comfortable really putting that rainbow flag out there.
Okay, thank you so much for those specific answers. I appreciate it.
That's good.
I have another question. Can you hear me?
Marla.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think what needs to happen is to have a local list in different places of LGBT businesses. I mean, like somebody, if you want us to work with them, we have to know who they are. So that's just something for the LGBT organization to consider.
Yeah. Where are you based again, Marla?
Pardon me, where am I? South Frontenac.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I agree. And I think that then, I think to Kyle's point, is there an opportunity for you to, engage the local, business association, or if it's a chamber of commerce, and I think that there's opportunities for us to also really strengthen through our regional affiliates, that base, because I agree. I think that the more that we can support all of you to support the community is much more effective. So, that's certainly something that our goal is, to try to really strengthen those relationships and really be able to showcase those businesses, those LGBTM businesses across the province.
I'd be pretty shocked if the Chamber of Commerce in my area had any lists like that. I really would.
So maybe we need to have a talk with them, and then we'll see what we can do.
Well, that might be another thing that you can do. Contact the different chambers.
Yeah. And that is one of the things that we're doing under what we're calling the destination audits, where we're working with various communities. So I'll get this number wrong and Leah will correct me, but I think we're working with right now 4 or 5 or 6 different destinations across the province at this point, to help them and their communities to go in there, work with their stakeholders, do what we're calling a destination audit, and then help them come up with solutions that can help them grow this in this space. And so our goal, to Debbie's earlier comment, the fact that we're working with TIO, is our goal here is to be able to do that on a much larger scale across the province. So
can we get on a wait list to be your 7th person? I mean, 7th business?
Leah has made a note. I saw her writing frantically. So.
All right.
Yeah, we have, there's 5 destinations within Ontario.
Okay.
That are right now in the middle of audits.
Great. Thanks.
Darrell, isn't that part of your whole membership structure for people like Marla? Marla, you have to join them as a member.
Just tell me how to do it. Tell me the link. So
I'll include that in the follow-up because it's really easy to do.
half my staff is LGBT. So
there we go.
But they weren't hired. They weren't hired because they were LGBT. They were hired because they were good.
Right. Absolutely. Which is great.
Mm-hmm. Which is very good.
I think, Kyle, did you say that you had something else? Did I see that?
Yeah, I just earlier on, one more thing that I would love to add is seeking out diverse representation for your board. When we talked about inclusion at all levels, and employees and volunteers and performers, taking a look within your own board to actively seek out representation from a lot of marginalized communities, especially if that's what your community looks like, is to see if that's reflected in your own board, so that all these planning decisions and thinking about these experiences, what it's, thinking about things like washrooms and pronouns, all these things happen at all levels of planning, so that someone can be that voice right from the start.
And then I think that speaks to, to Marla's point, as well as, having a diverse board, having a diverse employee base helps to bring that diversity of thought to what you're doing. So to how you're running your business, how you're doing your programming, all of that, that's the value of having a diversity, not only LGBT diversity, but, all diversity within your organization and on your board. I think that's a really critical piece for sure.
So we're coming up to the time. Does anybody else have any pressing questions? Okay, great. So Darrell, thank you again for joining us and doing this. This was really informative, and it was enlightening for me anyway. And so great to see you again. And I hope we don't wait another 10 years before we talk.
No, Debbie, it was great. I look forward to actually having a glass of wine with you in person sometime soon. But thank you for inviting me to participate. And feel free, Debbie will send out the information. She'll include my contact information and Leah's. So if anybody has follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. We're here to kind of support and help. And I just really appreciate you giving us the time to let us share a little bit about what we're doing.
Thanks. And next week we have Kyle. Kyle's going to be our speaker next week, and he's going to be talking about innovation and mental health. Right, Kyle?
Yes, partnering in innovation. So looking at how you can work with your suppliers to create solutions for challenges that we're having. But yeah, also talking about mental health, and I'm sure touching on things like this as well.
Great. Looking forward to it, Kyle. Thank you again so much, Darrell. And I have saved all the chat that has gone on, so I'll make sure that gets out to everybody. And yes, thank you so much. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.